Hi, welcome to another episode of Deck Top. Matt Johnson here. Today we're going to talk about electronics on the bow of your boat. We all know what it's like to have electronics by our console, back by our tiller. Those are all important, very important variables of fishing. But I want to touch on some of the tools you use when you're up at your trolling motor, when you're in your cockpit of your boat, when you're out there tooling around. Bow electronics. For me, it all comes down and stems down to my flasher. This is my best friend in the bow of my boat. I've used a lot of LCD models throughout the years. I still have one at the bow of my boat for GPS only, but when it comes down to targeting fish, targeting structure, targeting the bottom types, all those sorts of things, my flasher never lies. I use an FL20 at the bow of my boat from Vexilar. No matter what type of cover I'm in, whether it's thick vegetation, it can be milfoil, coontail, cabbage, I don't care, weeds, branches, this never lies. It tells me bottom all the time. It never blinks out on me and tells me it's zero depth. You've all seen it. If I was to poll all of you in the audience and say, tell me how many of you have seen that happen to where you get in thick weeds, all of a sudden your LCD screen starts to blink at you and you go, all deep my. You got to move back out from the weeds. Sometimes it resets itself. Sometimes you have to turn it on and off to get it to do what it wants to do. With my flasher, it never lies. And for me, I want to be able to move into the weeds and move out of the weeds without having to worry about shutting things off and resetting anything. I want to be efficient, productive, and keep moving. So with my flash unit, it tells me exactly just that. It tells me my bottom all the time. It also tells you hard or soft bottom. Very, very important as we go through midsummer when a lot of these fish move onto the outside weed edge and hold on hard bottom areas, especially for you bass and walleye anglers. You know, they're going to be holding on harder bottom. So using this tells you what hard and soft bottom is. You're going to have two distinct options, two distinct readouts. Hard bottom, hard, thick red lines, just like the color on my shirt here, is going to resemble hard bottom. So the thick, solid red lines are going to be your hard bottom. Soft bottom are going to thicken out. You're going to see more sparse signals. You're going to have some orange and green mixed in. That's going to tend to resemble softer bottom. So you can actually see where it transitions from hard to soft and vice versa. And where I want to find is I want to move in from the weed edge where it starts to get soft and find those hard bottoms either within the weed edge, weed pile, or on the outside weed edge. Very, very important piece of structure. Then I go back and mark that with my waypoint on my GPS unit where I have the LCD monitor next to this on the bow of my boat. So hard or soft bottom, very important. Distinguishing weeds, very important. Again, this is going to identify fish. If you want a vertical jig for walleyes, I've had it work several times just like out on the ice where I can see my lure as I'm fishing vertically, watch a fish come up and smack it. Very, very effective. As far as features go, it's packed full of features. You're going to have 20, 40, 60, and 300 foot modes on this particular model. You're also going to have what we call low power mode in 20 feet or less. So if you're in the thick weeds, I can go to low power mode and cut my wattage from 400 to 200 watts so I can get really fine tuned into what I'm seeing and cut through those weeds. Very, very effective. You do have zoom, so I can zoom in on the bottom 6 or 12 feet. That's a great feature to have in deeper water or outside weed edges to cut down on what you're seeing and get more detailed on those sorts of things. So again, packed full of features, very, very effective tool in the bow of your boat. When it comes down to cone angle, there's a lot of options for cone angles. Which ones do I get? 19 is standard. It's going to give you the most versatility as far as just identifying structure, identifying fish. But as you narrow your cone angle down to a 12 or even a ProView deucer, one of the 9 degrees, it's going to give you more detail. You're going to see more detailed information on exactly what's below you. So for the guys that fish the outside weed edges all the time, a narrow cone angle is going to be very, very effective. Or for you lake trout fishermen vertical jigging over deep water, the narrow cone angle is going to be great as well. So it all depends. There's several reasons as to why you would go wide beam or narrow beam, but they all have certain purposes. I do use the puck style transducer, and I get one of the kits from Vexilar and I zip tie it right in the bottom of my trolling motor. That's the most effective way to do things, and it works out great. You can go to Vexilar.com and get a very cool instructional video on how to do that properly as far as leaving enough slack lines so when you pull your trolling motor up and down, you don't run into any problems. So go to Vexilar.com and get that instructional video right there to get you how to do that. And also walk you through a couple other ways on how you can rig that up. But going with the right cone angle is important. Having a tool like this rigged in the front of your boat has saved me a ton of headache and a ton of hassle. With some of the kits, you do get an extra gimbal mount, so you're not removing anything off any of your ice fishing kits. And then I do use the Pro mount from Vexilar. It's a quick snap release system. I can mount the base anywhere I want, snap it in. I have a base on the dash of my truck, on an FL, on an Against Blue Box for ice fishing, and on the ball of my boat I can snap it in and go. Plug in your power cord, plug in your transducer, life is good. But like I said, this has been a savior for me many times in the ball of my boat when my LCD models are blinking out and not doing what they're supposed to do. And I can tell you, having this foolproof plan with the Vexilar, just like we know of on the ice, is amazing. So it helps me catch a lot more fish and identify exactly what I want to do when I'm on the ball of the boat. So for me, number one variable in my equation for my 3-part system for on the bow of my boat is definitely my Vexilar flasher. Let's move on and look at a few other options for the bow of the boat to put this 3-part system into a complete package. So moving on from your flasher model, your option here like we showed you, that FL20, a very, very important tool like you mentioned for the bow of your boat. Moving on from that, underwater cameras. You know, underwater cameras are, I would not say are a thing of the past. They're used heavily in ice fishing. Most ice anglers on the ice are using them now. Myself, I've incorporated into my open water scene many years ago with a lot of success. You know, we talked about just using the flasher for determining weeds, harder soft bottom, fish type, all those sorts of things that are very, very important to fishing out in open water as well. Now I encourage you to rig up your underwater camera in the boat. This happens to be a Fish Scout 1000, very, very effective tool from Vexilar that I rig in the boat. As you can see, I pop it off. You have basically power leads, and then you have the connection to your camera. You basically need to rig this up to a battery source. You can rig it up to an external battery just like you do one of the gel cell batteries, the 9 amp 12 volt batteries you all use out in ice fishing. You can rig up to that and tuck it up someplace near your bow. The other end of your camera plugs in here, and then you can rig this up on some sort of gimbal mount or apparatus so you have it on the bow of your boat. I actually have this rigged on the bow of my boat right next to my flasher, so as I'm up there tooling around, if I want to see what's down there and determine what's going on, I grab this, power it on, drop my camera down there. I can look and see what sort of fish are down there. What am I identifying there as far as fish type? Weeds, all sorts of things. Is this a color monitor? So it will tell me if weeds are green, if they're fresh, what's going on down there. You know, again, you want the utmost satisfaction for a tool that's not going to lie to you. The flasher's darn close, but having an underwater camera that shows you everything, exactly what's down there, is very, very efficient. You know, it's a learning tool. You know, I've always touted these pieces of equipment off as they're great for catching fish, and they will work. You're going to see a fish bite your bait. You're going to set the hook. You're going to do all those sorts of things. But it's a phenomenal learning tool. You're going to use something like this to see and understand the underwater world and what's below you. You know, as far as the advantage of an underwater camera in open water, you know, with a lot of sunlight coming down there, a lot of light penetration, it's amazing how far you can see on some of these clear bodies of water. You can tuck into weed beds and see what kind of vegetation. They're very fun underneath the big milfoil patches because, as you know, milfoil acts as a canopy. You have this mat of weeds across the surface, and underneath that you have it really stalks out, and you could walk under there if you wanted to in between the stalks of weeds. So dropping a camera underneath a chunk of milfoil, it's amazing what you've seen. I've seen big bluegills, crappies, bass, walleyes, muskies, pike, you name it, they're all going to hide out inside the weeds. And again, it helps you identify some of these targets that you're going after to give you some reassurance that, hey, you know what, I might be fishing the right spot. Deep water structure, finding rock piles, finding bait fish on top of rock piles, finding predator fish that are chasing bait fish on top of rock piles. An excellent identifying tool. And having this rigged in the front of your boat, it's amazing how much you use it if it's there. If it's not, then you might just throw it by the wayside. But I find myself having this rigged in the front of my boat by just pushing a button and dropping it down. There's not many days that go by where I don't turn this on in some way, shape, or form to see what's going on in the underwater world. And it's fun. You know, if you have kids, it's very cool to have this in the boat. My son's 4 years old, my older son, and he turns this on all the time and likes to look at the fish. You know, the bluegills will swim up to the camera, the little bluegills, and they get very excited about things. You know, it gets them enthralled and excited about the sport of fishing. And that's half the battle, getting your fishing partners out in the boat. And you saw Jack in the last episode of Deck Talk. He joined me at Rapid. As you can see, he's got a lot of spunk. So anything I can do to channel some of his energy is also important. So this is a twofold system for the parents out there. One, it helps you identify and help you become a better angler in the boat. Two, it helps keep your kids occupied. And you know what, adults, to be honest, sometimes we're kids at heart. So it's amazing how much this occupies myself at a given day. So very, very important tool, I think, and the bow of your boat is to have that in conjunction with your flasher. So bow electronics, very important. Another aspect of bow electronics for me is having some sort of GPS. I use Lowrance systems up front, the HDS models. You know, having the ability to have a split screen GPS sonar if you choose to do that, or a full screen GPS. Generally what I do on the bow of the boat, I have a full screen GPS with my Lowrance system. I run the FL20 next to that, so I have my sonar that always tells me the truth. It's never lying to me. And then next to my flasher, I pair it up, I should say, triple it up with the underwater camera. So I have three very distinct options for bow electronics. All have their own place in time. Like I said, the flasher identifies fish, identifies bottom structure, hard or soft bottom, whether there's weeds there, and gives you your bottom depth. It does cut through the weeds, so no matter where you're fishing as far as bottom structure, it's not going to blink out at you. It's always real time. It's very, very effective. The underwater camera is going to help you actually identify what types of objects you're seeing on your flasher, what species they are, the type of weeds, whether there's rock down there, rubble, pea gravel, whatever that hard bottom might be. So the underwater camera comes back with the fine-tooth comb and tells you exactly what you're looking at. And then you move on to your GPS system, which gives you your position within a lake. The advantage of modern day map cards is huge. I can now get on top of a piece of structure within a foot, to the point to where sometimes these 1 foot contour lakes you get on Lake Master, Navionics, whatever the map card is that you decide to use, they're so accurate days, I won't even use my sonar, that I trust myself. I'm on top of a outside weed edge, I'm on top of a main lake point, I'm next to a hump, I'm on an inside turn, I'm on the break line I want to be, and then you can go back and mark certain waypoints. So it's a 3-part process to being a very effective bow electronics angler. So you use this to identify certain pieces of structure and the depth you want to target. You come back, like I said, phase 2 with this to identify exactly what's down there. And then you go to your chart, your GPS, and you waypoint some of these pieces of structure that you find. Very, very effective system there for targeting fish, finding fish, locating fish, and then catching fish. So for me, all 3 of these have a very important place in the front of my boat, and they all get used quite a bit. I do get made fun of at times because when you walk in the front of my boat, it's like the helm of a cockpit of a plane. You have, looks like gadgets and gizmos all over. But I tell you, the flasher, the underwater camera, and the GPS model, Lowrance unit, they all get played with a ton, and they all have a very distinct place in my boat and in my arsenal for the system that helps me catch more fish. So, like I said, going back through it, there's a whole topic we can touch on GPS units, but the main emphasis is that they're important to have. Something that can log your trail, mark waypoints, and give you some sort of contour so you can follow that with your trolling motor. And then the other 2 parts of the equation, like we said, underwater camera, flasher, it's a 3-part system that is phenomenal for anyone looking to upgrade or boost up their efficiency at the bow of their boat. So for me, I spend more time at the bow of the boat than anything. I don't spend a lot of time trolling. I spend a lot of time up there by the trolling motor, tinkering around. So that is essentially my helm, my cockpit of when I'm fishing, and that's my command center. So like I said, I might be a dork when it comes to some of this stuff, but for me, that's how it works. Hopefully some of these ideas helped you. If it comes down to determining what type of cone angle you need on your locator or your transducer, by all means, send us an email. We can walk you through it. The staff at Vexilar, Vexilar.com, they have a phenomenal customer service. They're all very highly educated on what sonar you would need for or cone angle for different situations. There's a great set of forums there on Vexilar.com. They have a forum section. We can get an FAQ page, and we've already had topics going on cone angles for both open water and ice fishing. There's a lot of phenomenal information on there to get you set up with using these things properly on the boat. Instructional videos so you can see how they're properly rigged onto your trolling motor. All those sorts of things come into play. Some of them are minor details, but very important at getting your system set up so it's right for you. So when it comes down to open water electronics, for me, the bow of the boat's very important. Again, we've touched just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do. Any questions, by all means, fire them off. Hit us up at the website there, decktalkonline.com. We'll take you right to the main page where you can watch this and view it and see past episodes from not only this year, but last year as well. So we're out there. The Minnesota Fishing Open was this past weekend. So as far as I'm concerned, if you want to chase walleyes and pike, you have fair game. Anywhere to go after them. When it comes down to muskies and bass, the season here in Minnesota is not quite open yet. We still got to wait till Memorial Weekend for bass, and then muskies not for a week or so after that. So get out there, have some fun. There's some phenomenal weather ahead of us. Catch some fish, catch a few for me, and we'll do our best to keep you informed on some of the hottest topics as we pursue this season with Deck Talk. So again, Matt Johnson here, Deck Talk. Electronics on your bow, very, very important. We'll catch you next week.